I'm 70 and I finally stopped apologizing for these 7 things. I want to tell you something I could not have said 10 years ago. For most of my life, I carried apologizing like a second skin. It was always there, quiet and automatic, slipping out before I even realized it had left my mouth. Sorry for taking up space. Sorry for having a need. Sorry for feeling something that made another person uncomfortable. And for a long time, I believed that was simply what good people did. They made themselves smaller, so others could feel bigger. But somewhere around my 70th year, something shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, just quietly, the way the light changes in late afternoon without you noticing, until suddenly the whole room looks different. I stopped apologizing for certain things, and my friends, I want to share those things with you today, because I suspect some of you are still carrying apologies that were never yours to give. The first thing I stopped apologizing for is needing rest. I cannot tell you how many years I pushed through exhaustion because stopping felt like weakness. There was always something more to do, someone else to help, another obligation standing at the door. And if I sat down in the middle of the afternoon, if I closed my eyes for a little while, I felt this quiet guilt creeping in, like I owed the world my constant movement. But the body at 70 is not the body at 30, and pretending otherwise is not strength. It is stubbornness dressed up as virtue. I remember one afternoon, sitting in my chair by the window, the sun warm on my face, and for the first time in years, I did not apologize to myself for being tired. I simply rested. And I want to tell you something. That rest felt holy. Your body has carried you through decades of living. It has earned every quiet afternoon you give it. The second thing I stopped apologizing for is saying no. This one took the longest. Because when you have spent a lifetime being the person others rely on, saying no feels like a betrayal. People look at you differently. Some become hurt. Some become angry. And for years, I could not bear that. So I said yes when I meant no. I showed up when I was empty. I gave what I did not have. And then I wondered why I felt so hollow. There came a day when someone asked something of me that I simply could not give, not without losing something important inside myself. And instead of apologizing, I said no. Quietly, kindly, but firmly. The world did not end. The relationship survived, and I realized that all those years of saying yes had not made me generous. It had made me afraid. Saying no, my friends, is not a failure of character. It is a declaration of honesty. The third thing I stopped apologizing for is the pace at which I move. The world is in a hurry. It has always been in a hurry. But I am 70 years old, and I have earned the right to walk slowly, to think before I speak, to take my time making a decision. I used to apologize constantly for this. Excuse me, sorry, I know I am slow. As if my pace were an inconvenience I was imposing on the universe. But somewhere along the way, I began to understand something. Slow is not behind. Slow is deliberate. The most important decisions of my life were never made quickly. They were made in quiet moments, after long thought, when I had given myself enough time to hear my own wisdom. If someone cannot wait for you to be ready, perhaps they were never truly interested in where you were going. The fourth thing I stopped apologizing for is my past. I have made mistakes, real ones, the kind that kept me awake at 3 in the morning, long after the people involved had already forgotten them. And for years, I wore those mistakes like a coat I could not take off, always ready to apologize for who I used to be. But here is what age teaches you, if you are willing to listen. The person who made those mistakes was doing the best they could with what they knew at the time. That is not an excuse, it is simply the truth. Apologizing endlessly for your past does not change it. It only prevents you from living fully in the present. I am not the same man I was at 40, or 50, or even 65. Growth is its own kind of apology. The life you live now speaks louder than any words you could offer for the life you lived then. The fifth thing I stopped apologizing for is my emotions. I grew up in a time when feelings were something you managed privately. You did not burden others with your sadness. You did not show your fear. You certainly did not cry in front of anyone if you could help it. And so for decades, I apologized every time something inside me showed itself unexpectedly. Sorry, I do not know why I am getting emotional. Sorry, ignore me, I am being foolish. But emotions are not foolishness. They are information. They are the heart telling the mind something important that words have not yet caught up to. At 70, when something moves me, I let it move me. When grief visits, I sit with it instead of rushing it out the door. When joy arrives, I do not shrink it down to a polite smile. Your feelings are not a burden to the people who truly love you. They are the realest part of you those people get to know. The sixth thing I stopped apologizing for is the space I take up in conversations. I have known many older people who slowly disappeared from the middle of gatherings. Not physically, but they stopped offering opinions, stopped telling stories, stopped disagreeing when they saw something differently, because somewhere they had learned that their voice was less welcome than it used to be. I felt that pull myself. The quiet suggestion that perhaps younger people had more relevant things to say. But wisdom is not measured in youth, and experience is not a thing to be apologetic about. I have lived through seasons of life that most people in the room have not yet encountered. That perspective has value. So now, when I have something to say, I say it, not loudly, not to dominate, but without shrinking myself down, first, to make the words feel more acceptable. And the seventh thing, perhaps the most important of all, is this. I stopped apologizing for who I have become. Not who I planned to be when I was young and full of ambition and certainty. Not who others decided I should be along the way, but who I actually am, standing here at 70, having lived the particular life that was mine to live. This person has rough edges and quiet strengths, has losses woven into him and hard-won clarity that only comes from surviving difficult years. For a long time, I measured myself against some imagined version of who I was supposed to be, and I always came up a little short. But I am done with that measuring. I am done apologizing for the life I actually lived instead of some other life I did not. This is the man I am, and he is enough. My friends, I am not telling you to stop being kind. Kindness is one of the finest things a person can carry into old age, and there are certainly moments when a genuine apology is one of the most powerful gifts we can give to another person. I am talking about something different. I am talking about the quiet, constant, unnecessary apologies we offer simply for existing, for having needs, for taking time, for feeling things, for being human in all the ordinary imperfect ways that being human requires. There is a certain peace that arrives when you stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never quite large enough for you. When you stop offering apologies for things that were never truly wrong. It does not happen overnight. It happens slowly, one small refusal at a time, until one morning you wake up and realize that the weight you have been carrying was never really yours to begin with. If you are somewhere in your 60s or 70s, or even older than that, I want you to hear this clearly. You have lived long enough to stop explaining yourself to people who are never truly listening. You have earned the rest. You have earned the no. You have earned the slow pace and the full emotion and the seat at the table and the life you actually lived. Stop apologizing for those things and see what kind of quiet freedom is waiting for you on the other side. Thank you for sitting with me today, my friends. I hope something in these words found its way to the place inside you that needed to hear it. Take good care of yourselves. Be patient with your journey And until we find ourselves together again in another conversation like this one, may your days be peaceful, your heart be gentle, and your voice remain steady and unafraid.